It's embarrassing to admit, but I used to ask God to make me white. My sister's thing was praying on airplanes when they were about to land. Where she was anxious, I was vain. Maybe that's why I felt so at home in church, because I was just imitating the people before me.
I grew up extremely aware of my physical differences from like my white classmates, and it was always about eyes. So I grew up extremely like I knew the term epicanthic folds from a very young age, and it's a very like surgical scientific term for what type of eyelids Chinese and East Asian people have.
Just to get to church from the house I grew up in, you pass 7 churches. That's just what it's like to grow up in Waco, Texas. Every road leads to church.
God Can't Give You Double Eyelids is about my experience growing up in white progressive Baptist churches and the ways that that fit or didn't fit with my identity, finding my identity, my Chineseness. It's also just about like the ways that home can, or the places that you call home, can help you and hurt you in the same hand, with the same hand. And me trying to like parse through that realization.
We're going to make this statement that we finally are a church that welcomes and affirms women in pastoral leadership, whatever that means.
You're not a church that affirms women in pastoral leadership. You're a church that no longer oppresses women. Say that.
Yes. Yes.
One of my fears, like with this film, is that people will see it and come away with the conclusion that I'm only angry, like just angry and nothing else. Because I feel like the reaction to someone speaking on their experience with race is always like, "Oh wow, like you must have really had a terrible childhood, or you must have really hated your experience with church, or oh wow, I guess we were so racist to you." And I don't want that to be the takeaway, you know, like I want the takeaway to be a lot more nuanced than just my anger. I wanted to figure out how I felt about church, and I think sometimes the best way to do that is to try to retell the story to somebody else. So I think that's why I've relied on film to do some of that work. It was definitely therapeutic and also not that fun, to be honest, sometimes.
I don't fight with people who are very staunch in their beliefs of various isms. I just try to ignore those conversations at all. I go by something that Jesus said in the Bible, the truth shall set you free.
The first person I knew I wanted to talk to was my auntie, who, for as long as I've known her, and I mean longer than I've known her actually, for her whole adult life, has been really devoted to Christianity and the church, and she actually was a professor of the Old Testament at a seminary in Texas. One of like 5 Chinese women that actually teach the Old Testament in North America. So there's very few. And the reason I wanted to talk to her was because she's actually kind of a direct foil to my experience. She's someone who has dealt with the racism of the church for a lifetime, like has a lifetime of experiences with adversity and oppression at the hands of Christians in the church, and yet has still continued to hold tightly to her faith.
Somehow when I left the belief, I felt braver, more imaginative about what the world can look like, more compassionate towards myself and all my identities, more queer. So these days I don't pray much, on airplanes or for cosmetic reasons.
I made it for people who like me, maybe it's church and maybe it's some other space, like are still grappling with the ways that they feel hurt and feel traumatized lightly, maybe, by people and by community, and yet still like find that there's a lot of, and still find community, and still find like that this is a place that they're from, and that you can't separate yourself from that.